All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to IoT World Channel. I'm Lucian Fogoros, your host, and today we're talking about next generation manufacturing. Our guest is the CEO of factory automation at Siemens, Mr. Rainer Brehm. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Lucian.
Thanks. Now, I know you're preparing for Hannover Messe, and you're part of a panel called Next Generation Manufacturing, Transforming Production from Liability into an Asset. Now, let's start by defining what does next generation manufacturing mean in a Siemens vision?
Maybe first of all, I have never seen manufacturing as a liability, but more as a place of innovation, more as an asset always, because in our factories we try out new things and it differentiates us from the competition. So I've never seen that as a liability. Maybe others have, but first of all, the first statement and number one. And number two, I think we're using our factory very much also as a customer zero. That means we are trying out new things. We want to gain new productivity. We want to get more resilience in our factories. So what we are doing, we are really kind of creating not a factory, but creating a network of factories. And in this network of factories, we try out new things. And we try it out in one factory, and then we want to scale it into other factories. And what we have done at Siemens, we created an internal project called Factory Digitalization, which is doing exactly this, scaling good ideas coming from one factory, new products which were kind of proven in one factory, and scale that up to other factories.
Love it. Thank you for the insights. And we'll get back into the scaling and then a little bit how you make that available for other organizations. But maybe just a clarification. And by the way, on the liability or an asset, there's something that I simply picked from the organizers in the English side, so maybe it was lost in translation. Apologize if that was the case, but good explanation there. Thank you. Now, what are some of the main key enablers for next generation manufacturing?
Well, if you look first of what are the topics currently? The topic currently is lack of skilled labor. You want to get more resilience. You want to build more individualized products. You still want to get good productivity out. And so now, if these are the kind of the issues which you need to solve, you need to rethink manufacturing. You need to rethink manufacturing to get into more and more flexible manufacturing. And if you want to go into more flexible manufacturing, that also means you need to change things in manufacturing on the fly. So not kind of never change a running system, but constantly change and adapt to customer needs, to the resilience, because you don't have parts available. So you need to produce something else because you don't want to have a line down. So how you get that flexibility in? An enabler for that flexibility for sure is this IT-OT convergence. So how you can apply IT technology where you can centrally manage fleet, where you can deploy functionality onto the shop floor without kind of harming the shop floor, and making that happen, going more into an autonomous factory where the factory, the machine can decide by itself what needs to be done. You don't need to reprogram it. So you automate something which is not predictable, which is maybe also not repetitive. And that would be for me a game changer, going more from a very stiff, fixed manufacturing into very flexible manufacturing.
Thanks for that. And you've touched a little bit on automatic factory and perhaps how the decision gets made by machine. And I want to kind of just put things in context. So if I hear Peter Diamandis, Dr. Diamandis of Singularity University, he talks about how, in 2030, there'll be two types of companies. The companies they're bankrupt and the companies that leverage AI. And maybe if you could expand a little bit to what you see out there, to what extent are some of these industrial companies are benefiting from AI?
Yeah, a very good question. I think AI plays into a lot of different topics. You can optimize processes which are nonlinear, which you don't know the formula, how to optimize it. You use data basically to optimize the process. You can use AI for having a better quality prediction. You use AI for doing better diagnostic. What is the root cause of a problem? You're using AI for assistance systems. So to assist people, assist engineers of doing things. And you also then use it, as we said, for autonomous manufacturing, that a robot can flexibly grasp something without being programmed of doing it. But the robot itself decides where to grab a piece, so it goes into autonomy. So you see, it's a wide range, and I could give you for everything real examples. It's not only kind of Now, buzzwords, I think on all those cases, we have real examples how that looks like in reality.
Got it. Thank you. And you've touched a little bit tech for digitalization earlier in the conversation. How open are manufacturing to trying new things, to becoming more digital? And if you have some examples, that would be awesome there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So first of all, what is very important is you need to get the buy-in of the people. And therefore, you need to train and reskill, upskill your workers, your maintenance persons, your engineers, in order to get used to new technologies. So new technology is not a threat, it's an opportunity to drive things forward. I think this is number one, how we really engage people and they learn of how to use this technology, number one. Number two, on a factory, you don't want to do trial and error, but you need to maybe have a safe environment where you can try out new things to roll it out before. And we do that in our factories. We have open space labs where we try out new things, but not because it's a playground, because we want to get productivity and we try it out and then roll it out and scale it out into other factories. And then you also get the acceptance of the people on the shop floor of doing that. And thirdly, you need to somehow, accept both worlds, the IT world and the OT world. And none, the one is better than the others. You need to also link those two worlds together. And I think we do that also in a lot of customer projects, but also internally in our cases, how we bring the best of both worlds together to get acceptance in order that, OT persons are running with new technologies to, get the benefits as we discussed.
Got it. Thank you for that. And maybe just for benefits of the audience, as some folks come from the IT, what do you mean by the OT exactly? And how is this converging really? Because there's a lot of talk about it, but maybe just a explanation of what that really means.
I give you one example, which I just had. We have a very big software business within digital industries, and I talked always about connectivity, how we do connectivity. In my understanding from OT side was, I want to have connectivity to the brownfield, I want to have connectivity to the shop floor. When I talked to Tony, which is running the software business, when he thought about connectivity, he thought about connectivity to ERP, to PLM system, to databases. That was his mindset of connectivity. And we figured out we are, talking both about connectivity, but had a different picture in our head. And on the OT side, they think about real time, and they think about real time in microseconds. They think about safety. They think about long-term availability. And they think about, a line down of 10 minutes is a catastrophe. If you think about process industries, you cannot afford a line down at all. If you run a chemical process, there is not a chance to line down and reboot a server or something like that. So that requirements are different, and that needs to be understood then also by IT.
Right. So different objectives, right? They're all coming together. One is keep the machine running 24/7, make sure it's safe. The other one is, okay, you got to get more technologies, the idea. So they have to have a common understanding, and hopefully those objectives will blur on both worlds before because there's a lot of talk, but yet still it's still somewhat of a challenge out there for organizations. But yes, I heard your reference about Tony and the digital industry software. I think there's a lot of great stuff coming there to help
Absolutely.
Some of the small to mid-sized companies, and look forward to learn more next week within Hanover. And at Hanover Messe, I'm always excited to see a couple 100,000 people coming in one place in a small town of 300,000 people. Now, what is Siemens? What are some of the highlights that you're for the fundamental manufacturers and why should they be out there?
Well, what I'm really excited about, we don't have a product show. We said, what are the real kind of challenges we are facing in the manufacturing industry or in industry? So we have the topic of sustainability and profitability, availability and scalability, flexibility, as we discussed. So we grouped our booth really according to those challenges. So for example, we have a satellite called sustainability and profitability, where we show on a concrete use case on a car manufacturing, how we combine the digital in the real world, how we go really across the life cycle from product design really to the real operations, how we can bring flexible operations in place. So there is a real use case. It's a Simrod, it's an e-buggy. And we show how you maybe do a 3D printing on some parts of the e-buggy, but you need to replace it. So we really try to address the customer pain points, and with that show what we can offer as Siemens to address that. also in some specific to certain industry, addressing infrastructure, addressing process industry, addressing discrete industry. So I'm really excited to show the people those kind of aspects, and always kind of combined with latest technology. So talk about AI, talk about cybersecurity, about 5G, about blockchain, and so on, all combined in those use cases.
Appreciate the insights, and I'll be looking forward to see particularly what you mentioned on sustainability and having some sort of an index, right? Everybody makes claim by year 2030, you're going to be net zero carbon, but how do you measure? Where are you at today? What are you going to be 3 months from now, 1 year from now? And what is the way to get them into a nice dashboard? Because if you can't measure it, then if it's not measured, it doesn't exist, or how does it work?
Absolutely. And we're doing a launch on the fair, and that is going exactly in the direction you're saying. We call that C-Green, and it's a kind of what we wanna figure out is really the product carbon footprint on the entire value chain. So really from the first raw material up to the final product, and then maybe going even beyond on the life cycle, and making that transparent, and not a guess, but really making that transparent. And as you said, if you then have the transparency, including all the logistic ways, then you can start optimizing. And we are launching something called C-Green on the fair, which is exactly addressing the topic you spoke about.
Well, appreciate the early insights. And if you're in the audience, you have questions for Mr. Brehm, feel free to leverage the hashtag, and then we'll get the question on a LinkedIn Live on Wednesday. That is Wednesday, June 1st at 11:30 Eastern. And we'll try to get as many questions answered. If not, we'll also put them offline. So I appreciate your time, Mr. Brehm. Look forward to see you in Hanover next week.
Looking forward to see you, and looking forward for your questions.